Before I even read a word of this question, I know exactly what rule it is testing. It is definitely testing modifiers, what I call the modifiers rule. I know that because these are very easy to identify rules on the SAT. The answer choices will be long and they will be jumbled in most cases, right? For most of the grammar rules that we see on the SAT, there's just like 2 or 3 words. Maybe they're switching places. Maybe the punctuation is the only thing changing. But the modifiers rule has a lot going on. The choices are long. These choices are very long. So I know that that's what's important. And I also am kind of confirmed in that by the fact that we have this kind of intro part of a sentence and then the blank. And the modifiers rule is all about filling that blank, or at least starting that blank, with the thing that is being modified, with the topic of these descriptive clauses that come before them, right? So what are we leading into? What are we describing? The best way to do that is to turn the modifier, which is kind of this part here, into a question. Now, this one also has the complication that there's this double dash. And remember, when we use 2 dashes in a sentence, that is pretty much always going to be used to insert an interruption. So I'm thinking it probably doesn't matter for me solving this. It's almost like I can ignore it, but let me just make sure. Forming extensive networks via mycorrhizal net association, that is a symbiotic relationship between plants and fungi. Yeah, okay. This, that is thing, first of all, that is an important transition word you should know, or a phrase. It basically means like specifically, or in other words. It's giving you the same thing. It's describing what that is. So I don't need the definition of the mycorrhizal association. I should really learn how to pronounce that word. It comes up in like, I don't know, like a half a dozen passages. Anyway, get rid of all this. It all doesn't matter. It's just getting in the way to distract me. So the real modifier here, and then normally in a sentence, the comma would come right after the word association, and then we'd have the blank. Forming extensive networks via mycorrhizal association. Okay, what is forming extensive networks via mycorrhizal association? Turn the modifier into a question, and that is going to be the thing that we need to follow the modifier with. So what is forming extensive networks? Not it. I don't know what it is, so no. The transport? No, the transport can't form networks. Transport is like an action, so you can't form networks with transport. Nutrients? Okay, maybe the nutrients are forming networks. I doubt that, but let's take a look. Pine trees and the fungus Tricholoma these names. This fungus, right, can transport nutrients through their entangled tree roots and fungal whatever. So what's forming the networks? Yeah, the trees and the fungus. That definitely makes the most sense. Like they're, I don't know, that's what they are. They have like roots and stuff, I guess, right? So it's definitely D. I would have no doubt about this. The one thing that kind of bothers people, I think, or maybe that they do incorrectly with this rule, is they ask the question about what the modifier is about incorrectly, right? So I think I said this earlier. I forget my exact wording, but basically, the thing after the modifier needs to be the topic of the modifier, or it's got to be what the modifier is about. But what a lot of people will do here is be like, oh, the modifier is about the association or the networks. Not really. It's what's doing this action. It's much more about the forming. What's doing that? What is forming extensive networks? So the thing that I tend to do is, instead of asking the very open-ended question, what is this modifier about? What is this modifier describing? I tend to literally just turn the modifier itself into a question. And I do that with minimal change, right? I might need to move a word or two around. I might need to kind of change the verb form of a sentence, but I'm trying to avoid that as much as possible, because then I'm sticking as closely as possible to the modifier itself and keeping it in the form that the sentence has it in, so that it's leading into the right thing. So notice my turning of this into a question is just putting a what is in front. What is forming extensive networks? If I really wanted to change it to make it a little bit cleaner, I would say, what forms extensive networks via this association? Yes, the trees and the fungus form those networks. So that's what makes it really clear to me that it's got to be D. I'm not really reading these other choices beyond the first word or two. It's not about the rest of the words. It's about those first few words. And I definitely have a great lesson on modifiers that you should absolutely watch. It is one of those things that once you understand how to identify this rule and how to process your way through it, it's pretty much impossible to get wrong. There's maybe one or two things they can do to mess with us. They're not really doing either of those things here. This is very straightforward. The only things that they kind of did is they gave us words that we can't pronounce, which intimidates people. And they threw this double dash in there. But that's, again, kind of like a punctuation issue. It doesn't interest me that there's that dash there. It just doesn't have any effect on the rule itself. And it's because I know that it's about modifiers that I'm able to very confidently get rid of that double dash and be like, this is purely a distraction trying to keep me from understanding how the rule is really going to work. Great question. Definitely one that with practice, you shouldn't ever really even have any doubts about, nonetheless even getting wrong.